Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Novak. The tank you're looking at is Panagiotis. I hope I'm saying his name right. I'm probably saying it wrong. That's his aquarium. This will be in the second part of this video, and I'm going to explain to you uh, his whole event. And he talks about Dr. Fish, so you may be very interested in this. And then in the first part, I'm going to talk to you about a chemical, very old chemical used in the aquarium trade. In fact, this chemical was invented back in, I think, 1866 and is still used in the aquarium trade today. The trouble is, this chemical is not really advocated anymore. Why? Because there's lots of chemicals out there that cost a lot more than what this chemical is, and it's not as profitable as some of the other chemicals that are being used out there. Now, this is a very powerful chemical, and one thing that people don't understand is this particular chemical, there's two of them that have been used in the trade for a long, long time. Ever since I was a child, so I know it's been used in the 40s and 50s. It just is one of these chemicals that not only have been used for decades and decades, but has been very successfully used for many things. Now, I'll give you an example before I get into telling you about the chemical. Let's say you have goldfish, and you don't have the hardiest goldfish, like you don't have the shabunkins or you don't have the comets. Okay, let's say you have the fancy goldfish, right? And anytime you have the fancy goldfish, is this happening to you? You have fancy goldfish, and you may see a little bit of reddening on their tails, right? Or you may see these little nodules. They're white, and they may get on their tail or their fin. And if you squeeze them, they're real hard, and you would think these are fungus, but you find out they're not fungus, right? Or are you getting a little bit of fungus on your goldfish? They seem to be getting sick a lot, and you're doing everything right, but yet everything is coming out all wrong, and you're just struggling like a duck through the desert trying to keep your goldfish healthy and alive. And you followed all the rules, and still you're changing water, you're watching how you feed your goldfish, you're not overfeeding them so they get swim bladder disease. You understand what I mean. You're doing your due diligence, and your goldfish are still coming up sick. Well, there is a chemical, like I said, invented in 1866 by a German chemical company that can be used as a prophylactic that you can put in your aquarium, and between water changes you would add more of it. And the name of this chemical is methylene blue and or malachite green. These are synthetic dyes. At least they were invented as synthetic dyes. Okay. However, they found out that both of these chemicals, several years after they were invented by a German chemical company, a doctor called Paul Ehrlich experimented with methylene blue in a medical context, and he noticed that it turned both live neurons and malaria, causing parasites blue. So the dye dyed the parasites blue. He had proven that methylene blue coats successfully treats malaria. So this is why these dyes are used when you have parasites, such as that of velvet, or you're going to ick, for example, velvet. But there's more to these old chemicals than just what I said. It wasn't until many years later that Dr. Olaf Mueller found out that methylene blue, that the drug was most effective in inhibiting infections. Okay. And that is the big thing that concerns a lot of goldfish enthusiasts, inhibiting infections. In fact, there are over 21,000 PubMed medications, citations of methylene blue. Also, it's FDA approved and has many off-label treatments. Okay. Some of the treatments are hypertension and cyanide poisoning. And it's like, wow, this chemical that doesn't cost that much, that is a dye, can actually, take care of cyanide poisoning. Methylmeglobinemia. That is a problem that humans have, or a condition that humans get. And all that really means, it's a big technical word for low oxygen levels in the blood. Methylene blue can also act as an electron donor in shifting iron back to its native state and restoring the ability of the blood to carry oxygen. Pretty good for a dye. The ability for this chemical in shifting around of electrons, called redox reaction. Remember some of my older videos talking about redox reaction, which is a fundamental part of life. Methylene blue can also directly participate in energy production, which is called the electron transport chain. Okay, this is a series of redox reactions resulting in the flow of electrons, eventually creating ATP. Remember, I talked about ATP in earlier videos. Okay, this chemical, or if you want to call it a dye, can be used as a prophylactic. It can be added to your aquarium whenever you change water. Now, usually it will tell you, like, depending on the chemical, some may have a little bit of sodium chloride in it. Sodium chloride is used a lot in fish tanks. People add a little bit of sodium chloride to your tanks as a prophylactic to help, so nitrites don't become as poisonous to your fish. They use it in ponds, salt, for that same reason. So nitrates don't become poisonous to your fish. Anyhow, malachite green or methylene blue, or both of these dyes, they do the same thing. And what you do is just add them as a prophylactic. So if the bottle says you add so much to your aquarium every day for an ick treatment, you would only add one treatment for one day. Now, a lot of people get scared because it is blue and it could stain your hands, and they're afraid, oh, it's going to stain my tanks. And yes, that is a problem with methylene blue or malachite green, which is also blue, can stain, silicone. But a lot of tanks today are made from black silicone. And the only time you're really going to stain something is if you put it in real heavy. And since you're not putting it in that heavy and you're using it as a prophylactic, it's not going to stain anything. People don't like the color blue, but within a few hours or an hour or two, it's gone. You don't see the blue anymore. And in fact, you may even notice your tank looks a little clear. Like, wow, it kind of cleared up my tank. But you cannot use it with carbon. So if you are a non-carbon user in your goldfish aquarium, this will work great as a prophylactic for your fish. And what I noticed, that it will stop the reddening of the fins, the tail, the little nodules that grow on fins can even go away. Any fungus or velvet will go away, and it will help prevent any parasites from attacking your goldfish. And this usually happens with the more delicate species of goldfish, ranchus, your lionheads, your ryoncans, things like that, because these fish are more susceptible to water quality problems and can very easily, with their long fins, have a problem with the tails starting to turn a little bit red at the edges. And this will help stop that because of what it does by adding more oxygen to the goldfish. Even though goldfish do not drink water, they do get some water into them because of when you feed them. This is going to connect onto the food. They're going to eat the food. It's going to get into their system. So anytime you change water, you would add a little bit of the malachite blue or methylene green, methylene blue, malachite green. You would add that to your aquarium as a prophylactic. You're going to notice a big difference in your fish, and they may just stop getting sick on you because of the electrolytes that this will add to the aquarium. And it's inexpensive. Why is it not being told to you? Because it is inexpensive, and there's other chemicals and drugs out there that they'd rather sell you that for a little bitty bottle may cost $60, $70 a bottle. And this is not something they want you to even know. Like I said, it won't discolor your water. And if you keep a little bit in the water, it will benefit your goldfish and may change your whole outlook on if you had goldfish in the past and they kept dying, that they won't wind up dying on you. Now, I'm only recommending this to people who are having problems constantly with their goldfish. They're sick and tired of losing their fish. In fact, I even have somebody here where I live. They keep losing their goldfish, and I've sold them some of my goldfish because people say, "Where are your goldfish?" Well, I sold them. I sold them for what I paid for them, and they just buy them off of me only because now they don't have to order them. They could just come over, pick out their goldfish, and take them home. Unfortunately, their fish have died, and they rebuy their fish. Okay, they have the money to do so. But if you're not one of those people that are going to just rebuy your fish, which we all do not want, a little treatment of this, the methylene blue or malachite green, in your aquarium will go a long way of keeping your fish healthy and stop you from having a lot of problems. It's even used on the industrial level, where once I had a fish farm, they were putting all kinds of chemicals into their tanks because they came back from a show and it got cross-contaminated with their fish and their water, and they were losing their stock every day. And he finally called me up and said, "What can I do?" He says, "I've tried all these chemicals. My fish are dying. What can I do to stop it?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to tell you about a very old chemical. Put it in, and it should do the trick." And he went out and bought some methylene blue or malachite green. And I said, "Just add it to your ponds for 3 or 4 days and see what happens." Well, he did that. And lo and behold, that's it. Fish stopped dying. That quick. He lost 80% of his stock for his fish, which he grows koi and goldfish. 80% of his stock got lost before he finally used the chemical that I had recommended to him. And he was very grateful for it. Why didn't he use it in the very beginning? He didn't know. And nobody would tell him about it until he called me up and said, "Here's what I would use. Here's your problem. This really solves a lot of problems using these chemicals." Like I said, he used it, boom. That's it, stopped it. Fish stopped dying. So it's a very powerful chemical. It can be used as a prophylactic. Won't turn your tank blue. Don't worry about it. It won't turn it blue. In fact, it may even make your tank look a little clearer than what it has. And it will definitely help your goldfish with little problems that they're having as a prophylactic. And if you think about it, people, right? Some of them may have a little bit of salt in them. I've noticed them not to hinder plant growth with a little bit of salt because you're not putting that much salt in it. So if you do have a little bit of sodium chloride in it, it's not enough to inhibit your plants. So that's enough about that. Now I'm going to get on to the tank you're looking at here. Belongs to a person that sent me a email, and Panagiotis. I hope I'm saying your name right. If I'm butchering his name, very hard name. I'm not even going to try to I'm going to try his last name. Corfoxyloitis. I don't know if that's right or not. I apologize to him. But anyhow, he sent me this very intelligent letter, and I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to show you pictures of his aquarium. So, it says, "Hello, Dr. Novak. When I started this hobby, I found at first father fish. I made a big tank, 120 gallons, according to his instructions in Discord. Because he had personal communications, I was asking him when I had a problem. So he would contact Dr. Fish whenever he had a problem because he was, personalized, talking to people. My nitrates were at 400 to 500 parts per million, something that didn't seem to cause problems in my fish, but I think that is not normal. Of course, that's not normal, but some people have made claims to 400 to 500 parts per million of nitrates, and their fish showed no reaction. His instruction, Dr. Fish, were add plants and then add more plants and let the fish without food. Well, I don't have fishes to starve them to death for a week or two, hoping that nitrates will go down eventually. To be fair, the tank is running 3 months only. He claims that the substrate starts to work after 6 to 8 months, but I don't see how the nitrates will go down if there is no water flow like with a plenum like you recommend." So he was a little leery about what Father Fish was talking about. And of course, one thing I didn't know is Father Fish recommends that 6 to 8 months for even everything to get going, and lots of plants. He writes, "But I couldn't risk it. I added a canister filter with my built-in filter, a Real Joule 450 plus Sun 407A, adding except the mechanical medium, boring lava rock matrix of sea chem. 1 week now I have added a bag of BCB to the filter." Sorry about my mistakes here, but I imagine English is his second language, and I'm as I'm reading this, I'm also getting the mistakes that I have to try to correct as I'm reading it. So please forgive me if I'm kind of struggling trying to make the mistakes and add in the correct words. I probably should have added this before I came on and made a video, but you know what? These are his words, and I don't want to change his words because this is what he's saying, not what I'm saying, okay? We understand that. I have 110 fishes inside my aquarium, and I had no deaths or any kind of illness so far, but there are some issues that made me search more and found your channel. My big tank is like a jungle. I like plants. My tanks to be like a natural ecosystem, but 70% plants and 400 parts per million of nitrates are too much. That's a complaint I've heard about people with father fish. 70% plants. Not everybody's into putting 70% plants in their aquarium. And 400 parts per million of nitrates, that was a little much too for them. On the other hand, I had a 15-gallon tank that failed 3 times with his method. I repeat, I have followed exactly his directions step by step. So as we see by this line here, even Father Fish, what he says is not 100% accurate, even though he advocates that people should use his system and they shouldn't use what I'm talking about. Here's proof right here where someone has 3 times in a row tried his system, followed his system word per word and exactly to his directions, and has failed every single time. So I guess Father Fish's method is not without its downfalls. It is not foolproof, as he advocates. Let's see. The water was becoming red and the plants were leaving the substrate and floating. Even if they were attached deeply, you could see the roots going up. Now, what he's saying, I'm going to try to decipher this, is when you put your plant in a substrate, if there's no oxygen, the roots will have a tendency to go where there is oxygen in the substrate, and that's probably what he's talking about. The plant roots now were heading towards where the oxygen was, because plants cannot grow in anaerobic conditions. So they will have a tendency to then send their root system where the oxygen is, even if it's at very low levels. But existing without oxygen, no. Let's see. He also states in his letter, 2 times shrimp and snails died, although the ammonia and the nitrites were 0, and nitrates were at 20 to 50 parts per million. So I decided to restart one more time using a plenum. Under the plenum, I add a layer of matrix Sechem that I had, and I made 1 to 2-ish of course in the substrate. 1 to 2 twist of course in the substrate. Let's see what he's talking about. First layer, Euro pebbles, baked clay at 1200 degrees centigrade. Second layer, kitty litter, baked natural clay, sprayed with flourish iron. So he added his iron. Third layer, he added atabulogite. The best clay from that I could find, found in agriculture, and absorbs heavy metals and toxins from the water. Sprayed with iron too. Fourth layer, peat moss soil with iron, calcium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate, bone meal. I do this because my tap water where I live is very soft and acidic. That means way too low GH, KH, and pH. Fifth layer, river sand. So that is how he made up his substrate. Let's see, I can't give any feedback on nitrates as of yet, but there is something interesting you might want to know. As I said, my tap water is very soft and acidic, and although I have added calcium and sodium in the soil of the big tank, also there was no water change in the water. I had to add them manually in the water. In the tank with the plenum, though, in 6 hours, the water values, pH, KH, and GH, were as they should be without me adding anything. That alone is proof that in your system the water circulates, but in Father Fish's system there is something missing. Of course, I can't empty a 120-gallon tank and 110 fish to restart the tank, but I wish that I had seen your channel earlier. Let's hope that the BCB medium that I made will be enough to combat with the matrix Sechem. Time will tell. Thank you very much for your videos, your time, and your contribution to the hobby. And these are his pictures of his aquarium and his setup. So, in conclusion here, I want to thank him for sending me these. Apparently in his country, he watches a lot of what we have here in America, and I wish to thank him for that. But it just goes to show, you people, that all these people making videos out there, all of us are out there trying to help individuals. But it does go to show nothing is absolute. Okay? Everything needs to be taken. I know people, they will go with Father Fish and say, oh, it's great. Well, here's a person who says, hey, I've tried it several times and have failed. I've done everything he says. It's failed, it's failed, it's failed. I get that a lot. So there is no perfect answer to everybody's question on how should I set up an aquarium. All we can do is use the science that's available, which of course comes from wastewater management, and try to utilize that science to create a full nitrogen cycle. And when I say full nitrogen cycle, I mean from reducing ammonia all the way to reducing nitrates with anoxic conditions. That's the full nitrogen cycle as it is. It's not where you produce a lot of nitrates, like 400 to 500 parts per million, and the only way to get rid of it is through water changes. Then you're not completing the full nitrogen cycle, as is known and as has been advocated by our universities and colleges. So I'm glad he sent me this, because I hope it's a lesson learned to everyone who's listening to me and on my channel. The truth be told, there is no absolute perfect system out there to set up your aquarium. There is none. It does not exist on the planet Earth, not as of yet. All we can do is strive to do our best to help people so they don't fail, keep their fish healthy and alive. And that's all I'm advocating. If you use a plenum, it does not mean you have to even use plants at all. It has been designed that way to utilize bacteria, to grow the right kind of bacteria. And if you do not wish to use plants, it is that kind of system where plants are not a necessity. Where, as you can see, he claims Father Fish says you have to use 70% plants. Well, if people don't want to use 70% plants, then what do? So there's choices out there for everybody. I guess the only thing you can do is you pick somebody that you trust, that you put your faith in, that will advocate the correct way of doing something, or maybe the way that our science departments and our microbiology departments are teaching in our universities and colleges. You can choose that way. You can choose the hobbyist way. But apparently the hobbyist way is not even the way they do it in professional aquariums, like as I showed you in my video, the Florida aquarium, public aquarium, because they don't even do it the way hobbyists do. Hobbyists seem to have their own way of doing things, and that's the way they do them. So that's it for this video. I hoped you liked it. Sorry about the reading of the email, but I was deciphering it as I was going along. I should have probably redid the whole thing, but these are his words, and English is not his first language, but it's no big deal. We got through it. So until next time, this is Dr. Nova. Happy fish keeping. And of course, for you goldfish lovers out there, please think about it. It doesn't mean you have to do it, but think about the chemicals that I told you. The methylene blue or malachite green that you may want to add a little bit to your aquarium whenever you do a water change, because it will help your goldfish. And it may just stop their fins and stuff from getting that red on them and rotting or causing other problems that goldfish are inherited to get. So until next time, this is Dr. Noah. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, and happy fish keeping.